Hi there. I have lots to talk about this week, but here's one thought that I want to leave you with. And that's my observation, particularly this week, as I've puzzled over this, is that people who claim that they are against racism, so that means the Black Lives Matter people, that means many people in the Democratic Party, and definitely all these marchers and protesters and white liberals. People who claim they're against racism are the actual racists. Now, I'll have more to say on that topic, but first let me say a few things about our fabulous President Trump. One of the things I've noticed is when the ground changes, you got to give a person, yourself, anybody, time to regroup and reframe, especially if they want to do it carefully. So the political ground is shifting constantly. So you have all these riots and tearing down of statues. Normal people don't react immediately. It takes a while. And definitely in the case of President Trump, he doesn't want to overstep the federal government's powers. So he's working very closely with Attorney General Barr and others to stop some of this. But he's very aware of the power of the governors, the mayors, and what the role of the federal government is. And I think some people get distressed, or they just think about that. So I would encourage all of you, is people who are in these positions of power, people who are speaking out, people who are trying to make the changes that we want or the conservatives want, we need to support them while they're trying to do this. Because it's not easy. It's not easy. And I have to remind myself of my own advice, because I have gotten discouraged. But the last thing I want to do is for you to listen to this video and be discouraged yourself. So I noticed it takes me a little bit of time. Like, I was feeling weird one evening last week, and so I didn't turn on the television. Just felt bothered, as many of us do, right? And then I started Tucker Carlson, and he said something like, Biden can win, Trump's down in the polls. And I just had to turn it off. I had to turn it off. I was really bothered, just in my gut. So what did I do? Well, first of all, I don't trust those polls. I don't trust them at all. And I've been through too many presidential elections where some other side could be very high in the polls. I mean, these polls are very suspicious. I just think there's a lot going on. Sure, there'll be people that vote for Biden, and maybe there's some. I'm more worried about mail-in voting fraud, things of that nature, because I'm now convinced that the left will stop at nothing. But I don't want to go there. So by the time I woke up in the morning, I was okay. But I didn't think that Tucker Carlson helped anything. I had to remember that at the beginning of the Covid-19, the pandemic, he had some very scary videos about this pandemic and what was going to happen. I didn't really like listening to him then, because I didn't think it would be that serious, and I think I was correct on that, and that it was overhyped. So I really like Tucker Carlson. I understand what he's doing, but just know that sometimes he instills fear that you don't need. You don't need that. Life is too short, people. Life is too short. So you have to be aware. Now, you might ask, how did I get myself past this. When there's a fear operating, I mean, I'm convinced that President Trump will win, because if he won in 2016, he will definitely win in 2020. Because despite what the fake news media will try to get, because they'll play it up whenever it happens, which is rare. Somebody who voted for Trump in 2016, when he was a real unknown for most people, most of those, they're not going to not vote for him in 2020. It's more the other way around. People who did not vote, the whole walkaway movement was started on that premise. The whole walkaway, there were many people who did not vote for Trump in 2016 who will definitely vote for him in 2020. So that fact alone tells me that he'll win. And then he has Biden as his opponent. Oh, please. Oh, please. There's just so many negatives on Biden. So many. Just show a lot of pictures of him pawing little girls and women. I mean, it's disgusting. Mostly little girls that are trapped. It's creepy. So anyway, but I did let myself go there. What would I do? And remember, I would not be alone. There would be a lot of other people who would be extremely upset. Or probably like the people with the Trump derangement syndrome who screamed when President Trump won. So here's what you could do. Here's what I would do. I would definitely take my money out of the stock market, because we will be going through, our economy will be ruined. Our economy will be ruined. I mean, our energy independence will go away. More business regulations will crumble. All the things that made our economy take off will be ruined by the Democrats. So protect yourself. But don't do it on the basis of the polls because I thought, well, when would I do this? When would I sell my stocks? Well, I wouldn't sell them on the basis of polls the day before saying that he's going to, Biden's going to win, because I don't trust those polls. And they were saying that Trump was going to lose in 2016. I thought that the day of the election, that afternoon, I had a little cry, like, darn, all this work for nothing. He's going to lose. And I got over it. And then that evening, as returns came in, and I was on FaceTime with Jenna the whole night, my niece Jenna, and we were cheering every state that came in. And that was a great night. But that afternoon, I thought that Trump was going to lose. So I would have to accept that the market would drop immediately after if Biden won, but I would still sell all my stocks. And then we'd have to figure out what to do. But we'll cross that bridge if we come to it. If the American people are that ignorant, do they need to see how bad things can be with a president like Biden? Do they need to see that? I can't control that part of it. But what I can do is keep talking to people. So here's, you have to, I wanted you all to have a happy life, okay? We will go through dark periods. We will, okay? So what we'll have, if the worst came to worst, which I don't think it will, let me just reassure you right now, but I believe that in order to be calm about something, you have to go to the extreme and say, if that happened, what would I do? Because once you realize you can do it, you can live through that, then a lot of the fear goes away. I realized what was making me feel so paranoid was no, Trump can't lose. And that was contributing to my freaked out feeling. But once I said no, we would just form groups. We would do a whole ton of stuff. Protect your money if you have money in the stock market. I would recommend that. Understand that business is going to drop. Help your family and your friends, whatever you need to do. But go there in your mind and think, how would you survive? If that thought scares you. Now, having said that, don't worry about it. We're going to win. But what I do, so to make sure that that happens, first of all, we all have to get out to vote. And you all, whenever you can, talk to people. So I had to make a phone call. You know, I won't say what company, but they get people from all over the country to talk to them. And this was Friday morning. So at the end I said, so I'm curious, where are you from? Or where are you working from? And he said, Salt Lake City. And I said, oh. So I thought, probably okay. So just before I hung up, I said, I'm a big Trump supporter. I hope you're going to vote for Trump. And he kind of laughed. And he said he didn't vote for him in 2016, but he'll vote for him in 2020. Kind of, he's reluctant because of what he saw as Trump's character flaws or whatever, but he's done very good with the economy and all that. So he's probably a very strong practicing Mormon, I'm guessing. But I chatted with him. I go, hope I'm not getting you in trouble by chatting with you. But I said, you know, I don't see it. So I started talking about family. I said, I've read a lot about successful people in the past, biographies. And one of the things with a lot of successful men, their kids don't turn out well. And I said, he's got very strong family values. And I said, I think that what you've seen is hyped up by the media. They keep pushing these certain narratives. But I think he has very fine character. And I said, I used to be a Democrat. And, you know, I chatted with him. But I'm doing this whenever I can. And that's what I do. And on Twitter, I see that there's this one guy called The Persistence. He is registering people to vote Democrat. He's just going to every state. This kid is amazing. And there's a lot of people doing stuff like that. So we'll do what we can do and just hope that other people, don't vote. Because I think some people will see some things and just not be motivated to go out and vote. But I think we'll do fine. I think we'll do fine. Because I don't think people like this, what's going on in the country today. And, I mean, for example, I just saw something with Joe Biden where he said you would set a federal mandate for everybody to wear face masks. And I thought, I mean, they want to make us into like China and the federal government decide all that. That's supposed to be a state and local issue. President Trump follows our Constitution. So there's just a whole host of issues. So we'll have to see how this shakes out. But don't waste your time, please. Or, I don't know how to say this, but and remember, all the advice I give to you is really advice to myself. Because if somebody's giving you advice, here's an interesting thing I've learned over the years. If they're giving you advice about something, that's really advice they're giving to themselves. Think about it. Think about it. So, this is also advice I give to myself. I mean, by giving this advice to you, I'm really giving it to myself. So another thing I did this week was I listened, because you can get it on Amazon Prime, but now it costs $5. So I wanted to listen to Dinesh D'Souza's Hillary's America. Now don't let that title turn you off, because you might think, well, I don't care about that election anymore. I want something more current. But it's really a history of the Democratic Party. And I had watched it some time back. It was my first conservative thing I found on Amazon Prime. And I thought, I want to see it again. So I watched it again. And then when Robert was over here yesterday, we watched it again together. And it's very, very well done. He's funny, he's interesting, but he really talked about sort of his own investigation. Because when he was sent to prison for a campaign finance. I mean, it was just totally fake. And fortunately, he was later pardoned by President Trump. He didn't ask, but I guess President Trump heard about it. Somebody told him about the documentary. But anyway, it's an entertaining show. It really is interesting. But it talks about the history of the Democratic Party and its history of racism from the beginning. And I kind of knew this a little bit before listening to Dinesh D'Souza, but when I was a Democrat, I thought everything switched in the 1960s with the Civil Rights Bill and the Civil Rights Act. Then the Democratic Party became, was more the Republicans that were racist and Democratic Party was. Well, that's why I said people who talk about racism are the racists, and I'll get into that in a minute. But highly recommend that. It's on Amazon Prime. Dinesh D'Souza's Hillary's America, A History of the Democratic Party. $5. I think $4 if you rent, but I like to keep it in case I want to watch it again later. The other one I watched twice, to download it, it's $20, is Larry Elder's UncleTom.com. For me personally, that one was less compelling. It's in black and white, still very interesting, and it talks a lot about the history of the Democratic Party. I found it more of a story from Larry Elder's point of view about self-empowerment, and there were a lot of conservative blacks talking on it. So I think it might be more powerful for black people, but it's still very interesting, but not as, well, whatever. But anyway, highly recommended. And to download it, you go to UncleTom.com for $20. So I think that's really good. Now, one of the things is, and I don't encourage you to do this because it's kind of horrific to watch, is how many white liberals, and especially these young people, the vileness that comes out of their mouth during these riots and so-called protests, the ugliness, and yelling that they're against racism. It's very puzzling to watch. And even these people who talk about you have racism, and I'm thinking, you're creating racism. I don't want to look at people on the basis of color. I mean, it's just like a characteristic. Oh, well, you have blonde hair, you have darker skin, whatever. I don't think of it that way. And I don't want to think of it that way. I mean, why would I? I mean, certainly if you're going to describe someone, okay, they're plump, whatever, they're athletic, they've got this color hair, they've got black skin, whatever. It's just a description, but it's not who they are. But this is one of the things I love about Twitter. So just this morning, so I go on Twitter, and then somebody will say something, and then they'll have a thread, and you watch it. And so I just start, what I'm noticing is that there's a lot of conservatives who have just started Twitter accounts. It's like they're bothered. So they maybe join April 2020 or May 2020 or whatever. And they retweet good stuff. So I've been starting to follow them. So here's just two that I read this morning. One was a woman called Jackie. And she said, Democrats have always been the party of racism. They practice soft racism now, which is the racism of low expectations and pandering. So I followed her. And then there was another gentleman, Bob Lublaw, and he actually had a longer paragraph, but I just didn't have time to write the whole thing down. So, but the basic point was, white liberals, when I see them acting crazy, all I see is a racist going to confession. Brilliant. Brilliant. So let's talk a bit about cancel culture, which is a problem. And I read this, I tweeted a link to it, but in the City Journal, which is put out by the Manhattan Institute. By the way, you can just go to cityjournal.org or whatever, and you can get their email. So I get an email newsletter, but I actually get their print version. But they are very, very good in their articles. And the reason I say that, in addition to in-depth good articles, is it's very important what you read and see. So one of the things I've tried to do really all my life, starting when I wanted to educate myself, when I left Fresno and I was in the Air Force, is I realized that what I heard and what I read affected how I spoke and how I read. So for example, if I want to have good grammar, then read things where writers have good grammar. Speak to people with good grammar. So this is all relevant. One of my very first, my roommate, when I was in the Air Force going to tech school, Penny Fox. She was from an Appalachian community, very strange gal, but we were pals. You know, we traveled around in my Volkswagen, we did all kinds of stuff. We took weekend trips. So when you first got into the Air Force, you had a roommate. This was after basic training. And they would just assign you someone. And that was just brief before you got into the other dorm or whatever. So she just was, she talked all the time. It was kind of hard to deal with because she's my roommate. And but she would talk all the time. Now, her grammar was atrocious. And I recognized that if I did not mentally correct what she was saying in my head, I would start to pick up that pattern of speech. So every time she talked, I'd have to be saying it correctly to myself, which in itself was pretty tiring. But she's taught me something. She talked and talked and talked about this roommate that she'd had before. And then one day, we ran into that roommate. She goes, oh, there's my roommate, and this is my new roommate. And the woman was black. And I was shocked. All the time she had talked on and on and on about this roommate, she never once mentioned that she was black. And I hadn't thought much about racism, really, as a big issue, but to me, personally. But I thought, well, that would have been one of the first things I would have said about my roommate, because that would have been weird for me. Like, wow, I have a black roommate. Like, that's a thing. She just, didn't see it. Because believe me, she didn't do that on purpose. She was not that artful. She was just so out there. She'd just say whatever on her mind. She really didn't even think anything of it. That's truly non-racist. So I thought, and I'll get back to this too, but I thought a lot about that, and I thought, what is going on with people today? And I thought, what about the blacks who are very successful, whether they be spokespeople on television, whether they be actors, or highly successful in some realms, sports figures, rap artists, the ones that talk about racism out there, when they are hugely successful in this culture. How would that be possible? They're hugely successful in this culture. Made a lot of money, they're prominent, they have followers, and yet they are saying all this stuff about racism, institutionalized racism. Now, you know what? They're sellouts because they are hurting black people by telling them this lie. And I was so puzzled about the rioting and the looting. It didn't hurt the rich communities. it hurt minority communities. I mean, it really hurt them. Defund the police. It's not going to hurt wealthy people. They'll have their private security. But it's really going to increase crime in inner cities, which are basically all run by blacks, black Democrats. And they don't seem to care. So it's like they've sold out. It's almost like a self-hatred in some way. I don't understand that. Why would you want to take police away? And a lot of these are black police officers. I just don't. Well, anyway, that's what I puzzled about. But there's something psychological going on there. So, yeah, they're sellouts. They're the racists. Even all this stuff about trying to bring back affirmative action. Wow. And they're creating more. They want to create this division. I mean, Republicans, for the most part, conservatives, I don't see it. I don't see it. And I sure as heck don't see it in myself. I don't want to do it because, I've analyzed it. I thought, do I? No. So anyway, back to Penny Fox and her terrible grammar. So if you read the City Journal, it's well written. So in addition to whatever you learn from these articles, these very well written articles, you will improve your grammar. And I think speaking well is important. Have good vocabulary, good grammar. The reason is it won't hurt you in other situations if people aren't speaking well, but it will hurt you in some places because sometimes people will think, well, you don't know much if your grammar is poor. I mean, I still think you should speak out even if your grammar is poor. But it's really not hard to get good grammar. Listen to people who have good grammar and take some of their sentences and just repeat them over and over to yourself until you say it correctly. Because that's really how we learn language, just by what we hear. And don't listen to people who speak poor. Correct it in your mind. It's that simple. So anyway, this is called Pushing Back on Cancel Culture. And this is one of the things I'm very concerned about. So I've been thinking, how do we do this? So let me just read you a few paragraphs. They talk about all the people that are getting canceled. And really what I'm concerned about, it's not just getting canceled. It's the fact that we're trying to stifle any kind of free speech. And people, even if you don't directly do it to a particular person, has a chilling effect on other people. A chilling effect. They start to not say what they think. So this deteriorating environment may justify calling on Congress to protect explicitly every person's right to hold his own beliefs on a par with his right to be free from discrimination based on race, gender, or religion. So indeed, the Supreme Court's recent decision in Bostock versus Clayton County, holding that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 protects against employment discrimination based on homosexuality or transgender identity. I really didn't like the transgender identity part. May point the way to a further and necessary extension of the act that would protect political speech and activity. So let me just close with this. Points out, Congress has already made persecution for political opinion a basis for non-Americans to qualify for refugee status. Americans themselves should enjoy similar protection for their own political views. Many readers might assume that the First Amendment already protects employees' freedom of speech. Not so. The First Amendment applies only to the government. It does not reach private employers like Nike or Google. The legal situation here is somewhat analogous to that which made the Civil Rights Act of 1964 necessary. Before 1964, as a constitutional matter, the prohibition on racial discrimination applied only to the public sector. Congress had to enact the Civil Rights Act in order to subject private employers to the same anti-discrimination rule. Of course, an employee's political opinions and activities are all often relevant to the job performance. Federal law should not prohibit the Democratic National Committee from refusing to hire a conservative Republican job applicant, for example. But existing civil rights statutes already contain protections for this case. If political speech or activity is a good faith occupational qualification, then the employer should be permitted to discriminate on that basis. Protection against employment discrimination for political opinion or activity should not be confined narrowly to political partisanship. Few academics are fired for contributing to Republican political campaigns, but some are at risk for challenging culturally dominant left-wing narratives about, say, race and racism. So anyway, that might be a way, some kind of extension of the Civil Rights Act in order to protect against this cancel culture. And of course, we got to do something with the social media companies themselves in censoring free speech. It's really election interference. Okay, here's something else I want to talk about. If you feel something, other people feel it too. You're never alone. You need to have confidence in that. You need to have confidence. No, I encourage you to have confidence in that fact. I mean, let's just take Steve Jobs and Apple. One reason Steve Jobs was successful, for example, let's just take, he himself, he wanted to listen to music while he was walking around. He loved music. And that led to the iPod. He also wanted to not have to read instruction manuals. Remember back in the 90s, you get any kind of technical thing, you had to read the instruction manual. So he basically developed products that he wanted. So I trust my political instincts. And even though I'm now a Republican and conservative, even when I was a Democrat, as I look back, like, why did I never really like Hillary Clinton? I was going to vote for her in 2008. Why did I have reservations about Barack Obama? I was glad that a black got elected president, but I had reservations. I liked Bill Clinton the first time I heard him speak on C-SPAN because I liked the kinds of things that he said. So even though he has many weaknesses, and I don't think he's as evil as Hillary Clinton, but I feel a strong emotion for our president today, President Trump. I was extremely bothered about the Brett Kavanaugh hearings and how he was treated. I mean, remember how ugly those people were, pounding on the Supreme Court door, making these chants, making up stories about him that were clearly not true. And I was so upset when everybody kept saying that Christine Blasey Ford was credible. That one, I mean, I was having really a lot of difficulty with that. And then people say, well, you know, he didn't speak like a judge. You know, no matter what he did, he couldn't win. So one morning I woke up and I just scribbled all my thoughts down and I made a video and it went viral. I said, she's not credible. And here's why, folks. And I just talked about it. So I was sitting there all that time thinking alone to myself, she's not credible. And then look at all the other people who said, oh, I've been feeling the same way. So when you have emotions, okay, you're not the only one. Trust that. Trust your instincts about people. I mean, don't you just get bad vibes about some people? Can't you see their insincerity? Don't give up your own judgments. By the way, let me just say another thing about racism. I mean, because somebody said something about supporting whites, and I'm like, no, I don't care about that. I care about what this country stands for. I mean, I don't care if we're all dark-skinned. I don't care what we look like, but do we support the values of this country, this great United States of America, and what we stand for? It's not about race, people. But let me just point out something. It's better to be a mutt. You're healthier genetically. I was very lucky. All of my 7 siblings and myself, we don't have any genetic issues, any problems like that, because my dad was from Nashville, Tennessee. But this was World War II, and he came out to Fresno, California. My mother's relatives came from Germany, but my grandfather, his relatives came from Germany, and my maternal grandmother came from, she was a German-Russian that came over when she was 10 years old. So even the German part was separated. And then my dad, I don't know, I've never looked up my genetic heritage, but Castleman, I'm supposing that's somewhere where castles came from, but I'm guessing kind of English. But anyway, they were very genetically separated, if you will. And I think that benefited all of us. So if you look at someone like Tiger Woods or even Barack Obama, when you have people from different continents that meet and get married, they just are born with a genetic advantage. So people who are blended, if you will, you know, they've got a mixture, and I mean, they've got an advantage. I mean, I personally think someone of mixed race is just better looking. Okay, it's kind of hard to look good if you're pasty white. Sorry, it's the way it is. But you know, we do what we can do, right? We pasty white people. So I mean, be proud of whatever you are. Who cares? Who cares? Just wow. And here's another thing. I just watched a couple videos. My COVID-19 story. So there's numbers coming out that say, oh, we've got an increase in cases. Well, if you listen to Pamela Popper on YouTube and others, I mean, I don't care about who's getting it. I do care about mortality. So if you're testing more, there's going to be more cases. But these were stories of my COVID-19 stories. I have to recognize that there's a lot of, not a lot, but at least the ones that did the videos, of young, kind of youngish people. They look to be in their, I don't know, late 20s or something, who got COVID-19. And I'm just thinking that maybe they did too much quarantining and they did something to their immune system. Because they said, I followed all the rules. I didn't go out. I stayed inside. And then they feel bad because one time they finally went out. You know, they kept their mask on. They did everything. They put the hand sanitizer on. And then they got it. And I thought, what's their immune system like? Could it, staying indoors like that have done damage? And they all looked pale, including the one so-called black guy that was talking. And I'm thinking, do they get enough vitamin D? Seriously. They all were very, very pale. And they blame themselves. And of course, this is spreading fear, like, oh, we need to quarantine more. But I'm thinking that maybe we've hurt people more than we've helped them. I mean, my own personal view is just let this COVID-19 thing run its course. Don't try to do all this stuff. Don't try to prevent its spread, because you can't. Because apparently these people were following all the rules much, much more diligently, and they still got it. And I'm thinking, why didn't they give them hydroxychloroquine and zinc and azithromycin? I mean, why didn't they do that right away? Why did they even have to suffer? Fortunately, they're young. They all recovered. They're recovering. But it just spreads this fear and this thought that you're actually protecting yourself by wearing these masks. No, you're not. You're not. Because they're looking back and they're saying, oh man, that one time I went to the restaurant to pick up some food. I've been staying indoors. I've been not doing anything. And they think that's what caused it. And I'm thinking, what are their vitamin D levels? I haven't been doing any of that stuff. I go out, I don't wear a mask, I hug everybody. I don't let, they come to the house to do any work. It's like, this is a no mask zone, people. I don't get sick. I'm 66. So, I don't know. I just think it's a mistake. And it's being done for some other reason. So maybe they can stop. I mean, I personally, okay, I'm sorry. Here's another thing that really freaked me out about Joe Biden possibly winning. And that's this. I'm retired. I have enough money. I have a beautiful home. And except for the fact that I can't do the traveling rings and climb the rope at the beach, which I used to do every Friday, and I love that sort of thing. And I'm not really traveling that much. Can't go to do my Caltech activities, but I'm kind of disillusioned with Caltech right now. But anyway, so that doesn't really bother me. It doesn't really affect me. I don't have to worry about work or anything like that. But when I go outside and you're going to try to tell me to wear a mask, that suffocating thing, which I absolutely don't believe in, that's where I draw the line. That is not for me, okay? Don't take away my freedom. Let people decide for themselves. If you want to wear that mask, then go for it, okay? If you want to submit to tyranny, if you believe this stuff, like these young people who got the COVID-19 and they followed all the rules, oh my gosh. If you're just going to follow all the rules that the experts tell you and you don't think it through yourself, you're in for a bad life. You're in for a bad life. Get outside, exercise, don't be so clean for everything. Anyway, that's just me. But I want to thank you all. I'm now up to 2.29K subscribers. And I've gotten nearly 13,000 views on my second walkaway video, which was episode number 25, which had to do with watching that movie Unplanned and deciding that I'm pro-life, not pro-choice. So I try to stay on topic here with my videos. This is kind of the advertising part, because I don't like when people start their video with advertising or housekeeping, if you will. So if you're finished, you're finished. I'm just talking housekeeping right here. But it's my own reactions to other people's videos that help inform me how to do these videos. I don't want to hear the housekeeping stuff right up front. I don't like it when I go with video and they go off topic, because I'm there to hear a particular thing that, you know. So I try to respect my audience, but I do have a lot of thoughts about longevity, health tips, and things like that, and maybe some psychology, you know, psychotherapy kinds of things. So if I ever do a video like that, I will do it midweek. So those of you that have hit the notification bell, if you get a notification of a video from me that's midweek, it's not going to be a political video. I'll save that for my Saturday night upload. It'll be on an off topic. But if you're interested in that, then you can watch it. Because I just have one channel. And I do want to respect my audience. Because I really respect you, and I appreciate that you enjoy these discussions. And thank you for subscribing. But, you know, this is not for everybody. You know, I think we've covered it. Oh, one more. Our president is making some good changes. Because listening to, you don't want to listen to these people. Listening to the people who have been educated in our education system, and oh my gosh, they are really, some of these liberals and the things that they say and believe are horrendous. But President Trump just signed an executive order for federal hiring to say that you're going to put the focus more on skills and abilities of that person rather than what their university degrees are. And I think that's a start, because I think our university system is really messed up. I mean, you need it for certain professions, medical profession, engineering, maybe physics, math, whatever. But for all the other things, I don't like it. And I'm somebody who has 2 master's degrees, so I've been steeped in the whole academic community. And I just think the things that are being taught now are so bad. And so the fact that all these kids think they need to go to school, universities, and then they get stuck with this debt, no, you need to get out and work. You need to develop skills. You need to develop common sense. Well, this has been my longest video ever. I should stop, but thank you. This has been fun. Next week. Bye.